Guys, this is part 4 of chapter 4, Smiles Red as Blood. Sorry for different parts, different videos, because my phone kept dying. So, sorry, but let's get started again. Said the first. I guess that's right. No, Gretel said. It's my fault. If Hansel and I hadn't run away from home, he wouldn't be dead, and we never would have killed the baker woman. And the father never would have wished, and the father would never would have wished his sons into swallows. And the third raven interrupted her. Do you remember why you ran away, Gretel? She looked into his black eyes and nodded. He said, Seems like a pretty good reason to me. Gretel stared past the 3 ravens and out the window, and the red and orange leaves that balanced on the ends of the branches like tears. After a while, the third raven said, Well, we really should be going. More flying around to be done, letting people's fates out of the bag. Anything else we can answer for you before we go? Said the second raven. It really isn't my fault, Gretel said. We are unable to lie, said the first raven replied, so it must not be. And with that, the 3 ravens beat their back wings against the air and flew out the open window. Gretel fell back on her bed. It wasn't her fault. She had the sudden impulse to take all the sadness that had been crushing her and hurl it away, to hurl it at those who had caused it in the first place, to make them feel the pain and know it and understand her. Slowly she reached into her pocket and let her hand close around something that was small and cool and turning blue. The next day the village was all merriment, as well as harvest gorse and autumn leaves, and other signs of the festive season. Neighbors spoke cheerily about the cool weather, and little clouds of steam puffed from their mouths. Smoke rose from chimneys, and the smell of roasting sausage, topped with apples, wafted over the gathering. The handsome young man stood with other men, drinking beer from a great mug and laughing about this and that. Children ran to and fro. Soon the sausages were ready. The heaping platters were brought to the tables. Gretel quickly emerged from the old woman's house, her hands buried deep in the pocket of her dress. Everyone went to their seats at the tables, and the master of the town stood and delivered a few kind words. The couple of the older men did as well. Then the handsome young man stood up, raised his glass to the woman, and said that they were as beautiful as any woman in all the world. All the men cheered heartily, and the women blushed and smiled. And then, to everyone's surprise, Gretel stood up. Can I say something? She asked timidly. Even standing, she was smaller than most of the sitting adults. Get up on the chair, honey, one of the villagers told her, so she stood on the chair. I want to tell you, she began. But then she stopped. She looked at the handsome young man. He was smiling at her. But then she glanced out at his hands that could tear a girl's soul from his body. A dream, Gretel said. Just a dream that I had. The villagers murmured with approval. Once upon a time, you see, dreams were thought to possess hidden truth. I dreamed that I went to Switserwald, she said, but as I walked through, and the rain hit my face and the birds stripped my feet, I heard the trees whisper, Go home, little girl, go home, to the murderer's house you've come. The villagers stared with dismay, and the young man was staring at Gretel with a very strange expression on his face. Gretel glanced at his powerful, magical hands and said hastily, It was only a dream. I came to a house in a clearing, and white birds hung in from cages from the eaves, and they chanted all together, Go home, little girl, go home, to a murderer's house you've come. But I went inside the house and followed a light to a cellar, where I found an old woman wearing a chain of iron. She told me to flee, and that the man who lived here was a son, and a warlock, and a murderer. The young man leaped to his feet, and all the videos stared at him sheepishly. He sat back down. It was just a dream, Gretel said cautiously. Just a dream. Then the man came home, and, she added quietly, he looked just like you. And Gretel pointed to the handsome young man, who was staring intently at her and began chewing on his fingernails like a madman. He had a girl, and he was dragging her by the hair. He threw her onto a table and pulled a pure white doe from her mouth and put it in a cage. It was only a dream. And then he took an axe and chopped the girl to bits. It was only a dream. And he licked the blood off his fingers and threw the bits of the girl into a boiling cauldron. It was only a dream. The villagers were now talking to one another excitedly, pointing first at her, then at the young man. Except one piece did not go in the cauldron, she went. The girl's finger had a gold ring, with rubies red as rubies, and B. He threw the finger in a rage, and it tumbled through the air and fell right into my lap. She paused. The villagers were now silent. waiting for the conclusion of Gretel's tale. The handsome young man's shoulders were rising, and his eyes were wild. Gretel, standing on the chair, put her hand into her pocket and drew it out again. "And here it is," she said. She held the blue finger with the ring still on it in her hand. The young man leaped from his chair and began to chant the words of a dark curse. Before he could finish, someone came out behind him and knocked him unconscious with a tray of sausages. Then the oil was prepared, and a villager was sent to find the poisonous snakes. Because the best way to kill warlock is to cook them with poisonous snakes in a cauldron of boiling oil, obviously. But before the handsome young man could be thrown into the cauldron, Gretel went up to his unconscious body and slipped her slender hand into one of his pockets. She withdrew the tattered, blood-stained piece of twine. She put it in her own pocket and then nodded to the men of the village, who hoisted it up to his limp body and threw it into the hissing vat of oil and snakes. As the evil young man's life came to an end, somewhere deep in the forest, a magical shackle was broken, and an old woman was set free. And around the eaves of a dark house, 100 doves burst from forth their cages and fell to the ground. Young woman again. Gretel returned to the feasting table with all the other villagers. They comforted her and marveled at her courage. At the end of the meal, she approached the widow, and after apologizing for being so willful and disobedient, told her that she would soon be leaving. "Where do you plan to go?" the widow asked. Gretel thought about it. At last she said, "On." That one didn't end so badly. Yes, it was pretty gory in the middle, but Gretel didn't lose any body parts, and nobody died. At least nobody we really liked. In fact, things started getting better right here. So if you're still feeling sad about Hansel or anything else, don't stop now. In fact, you're feeling sad, now's the time to keep going. On the other hand, if you're feeling sick in your stomach because of all the blood, now's a great time to stop. I don't like blood, so I'm still going to keep going, so that was the end of chapter 4, so hope you guys enjoyed it, and watch my other videos, because I'm going to be doing chapter 5 sometime, so bye!